I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but the altitude at which there is ice is about 1,800 feet. And while it's still frozen, I got to bring this rig up the hill and get that tractor put back in the barn. It's gorgeous out this morning. I don't know if you can see, but look at the ice. Frost line on the hills. And yes, we got up the road. It's froze. No problem. That workbench is going into the shop. A very important workbench to me. And that will be the first one in that shop. This is what the shop looks like right now. It smells good in here. And the track hoe has good company. You know, mice in the hay. Put the hay rake right there next to that wellhead so some fool doesn't run into it with a snowmobile. This used to be a trail. Take a look at that view. I've got these cases nice and toasty. I'm going to set a seal in there, just get it over with. Before you put the handle on, remember we took all those little rubber parts out? Get those back in there. Because it's a pain to get those in once the handle is on. Alright, now the handle can go on. And you got these locating pins. Three of them. Alright, once you get here, next best thing to do is get the tray on. Before I get too far, I better put the wires through the case like a 372 and get that ground wire put on there as well. This little thing. Make sure that sleeve is back in the handle before you go nuts. Otherwise you'll spend a lot of time fighting with that. Remember, we had this washer, and then the flywheel nut. And like all these Husqvarnas that have that 13 millimeter nut on the 8 millimeter thread right there are 26 foot-pounds. And don't watch how I do it. This is not the approved way of getting it done. $20, $22, $24, $26. I checked over the intake boot really carefully, and I don't see any sign of problem with it at all. I don't see any cracks or anything. Used to want to get the ones that had a yellow dot. This one doesn't have any dot at all, so I'm assuming they've solved that problem. So let's just put the boot on first. You see how those little rubber tabs set right there and right there to make sure that it's oriented properly. This is one of those clamps where you can't make it too tight because it butts up against those two little drums. Okay. Next, you got to make sure you put that ring in there. There's a couple little flat spots. Right. Then the carburetor goes next. Notice it has those red sleeves on the inside. I don't know if it'll pick it up. You don't want to go crazy tight on these. Okay, I like to get a little bit of oil on the inside. I also like to get a little bit on the rings. Just a little bit. And I also like to get a little bit on the wrist pin bearing. Wrist pin. And there's your arrow. So it always points to the front of the saw. And I'm going to put the second pin on from this side, so this is the side I'll start before I put the piston in there. Put the circlip on. I always like rotating that little clip to the bottom. Does it really make a difference? I don't know. Come out nice and smooth. Get a little bit of oil on that. Just a little bit, so nothing's dry. Put the wrist pin clip in on this side as well. Turn it around once to make sure that it's actually seated. Make sure that it's actually nice seated in that groove. And I'm going to check the other side and make sure it's seated. And it is. Then, like I said, I'm not going to use my 1184. Okay. Make sure they go in nice and free. Get all this stuff out from underneath the carburetor. This is a good time to get the throttle cable on, just like a 372, before it settles all the way down in there. It's a good time to get the pulse line set up there too, and the fuel line. So here's a pulse line. Get it up there on that top of that carburetor. And the fuel line. This guy right here goes here in the back. And then we've got the anti-vibe right there. Kind of hook it, and then you sort of snap it into the, there's like these clips on the filter holder, you sort of push that right into. Put the other screws in. I don't like that screw. I'm going to get another one. Yeah, I didn't like the way that one looked with the threads beat up like that. So I'm going to toss it and put a new one in for my 372 stash. Yeah, it feels a lot better. I'm a little bit careful with these because I don't want to be the guy who cross threads one of these darn things. So that's why I do it by hand on a customer, on somebody else's saw. On my saw, I just set them right there with a Akita. But on a saw that is not mine, I put them in by hand. For the most part, this saw right here is done, you know. The rest of it I'll film, but I may pick it up a little notch on the speed. You know, do your standard cross hatch pattern here. And while that's settling a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and put together this side of the saw. And just letting the gasket sort of compress a little bit. I like to get a bunch of grease up in here before I do those. Well, the assembly of the PTO side is very much like the 372 as well. It has the same little oil tube that goes down in there. And same oil pump. Can never forget that little rubber piece right there. And it's a lot easier putting in the oil pump before you put in the chain brake stuff. It just sits right in there like that, you know. And you don't have to worry about those goofy sleeves and stuff. And notice these have got just a little bit of that blue on there. And I kind of like to put 11, just a little bit of 1184 anyway. Combination of a sealer and a glue. You don't want to get crazy tight on these things either. Now once that's in there, if you can get the worm gear in there if you can find it. And again, I like putting a little bit of grease on them. Just me. Now, instead of sitting up against a sleeve like a 372, the clutch runs right up against that step in the crank. Oil pump in, that's right there. This is a great time to start with doing the chain brake, and the chain brake is pretty easy. You know, there's a couple little things you got to pay attention to. Start by putting in that spring. There's really no sense in setting back just yet. Wait until you get everything put together. Put in that little piece right there. It's kind of a toss-up whether you leverage it on, push it down, or do you use a screwdriver to wedge it in from the other end, you know. Sometimes I have better luck doing it like this. Today happens to be one of those days, and sometimes I have better luck doing it the other way. Now, what I do is I get the cover, and I make sure I have all 4 screws sitting right there, so I know exactly where they are. Right? And then once I have everything pretty much the way it needs to be, I set that back as far as it'll go. Right? And then I use my handy dandy spring tool. Get that right in there using this guy. And as soon as you get that in there, get this cover right on. Do not wait, do not pass go. Get it right on there. Make sure that's rotated far enough forward to get behind that. And this guy goes like that. One thing you got to make sure is that band goes behind the little bumps there. Otherwise you're going to have a hard time getting your clutch and things on. This is all reverse thread. So I'm going to go rattle this just a little bit with the air wrench and come back. I just hit it just to snug it. Otherwise what happens is you fire that saw off, that thing will come right off and go running right across your floor in a hurry. Once you have that stuff on, you know, it's pretty much block and tackle from that point on, you know. Again, I like to put a little bit of grease on the bearing. Just so it's not dry. And just like a 372, that slot has to capture the worm gear. You hear it going from side to side in the slot. That's how you know you've got it. And then we can go put the sprocket on. And then you have the guide plate, and there's a screw. So it's just right here. Hold the guide plate on. This is a great time to put the muffler on. You've got to put in a couple of pieces. You have to always ask yourself, do you want to put the decomp on there? I kind of wish the kit came with a new one, because I really don't like sticking a used one back in like that. But on a saw this size, you pretty much have got to run a decomp. But when you're doing a rebuild, I kind of wish they put a new one in there, you know. Let's see if we have spark. We have spark. It'll shut off. Shuts off. Spark. No spark. Same with a spark plug. If you're going to do that much of a rebuild, you know, give me a new spark plug to put in there. Okay, one thing we got to find is the anti-vibe spring that goes on the cylinder. Here it is right here. And here's the muffler. I got the right muffler bolts. By the way, this goes right there now that I have them snug and tight. Alright, to do the muffler, it goes like this. That's how the shield goes. Okay? And then the gasket. And then the muffler. Okay, handle goes on. Top hat goes with the flat side in. Or the hat side, the rim side goes towards the case. There should be a little screw for this side right here. There it goes. That's another one you don't go crazy tight on either, right there. I guess cover goes next, right? Getting down into the nitty-gritty here. I don't see the boot there. I don't see that at all. I think we have saw. I think I need to test fire it and see if it runs. Alright, let's see how many pulls it takes to start a fresh saw. That's a good sign. I think it's ready to go back to work. I will put together a video. Saw is together and running. A little bit of sanity time, just splitting that wood right there with the axe.